It's that time of year again. Let's just pretend that this video isn't dropping at the end of March and there's snow outside. We've had the best of the best drop this year, and Starfield. Unfortunately, I was so broke I didn't play a lot of these new titles. If you're familiar with my annual best games that I've played this year over on the Clock app, I catalog all the games I play throughout the year and I rank them. Now, this doesn't mean the best games that have come out this year, it's just the best games that I've played this year, as the title would suggest. So let's get into it. Let me know what your top 10 is in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Number 10, Marvel Midnight Suns. Yeah, I'm very surprised by this one too. I was not expecting a lot from Marvel Midnight Suns. I even clowned on the game before it came out. But I mean, character customization, relationship trees, a superhero game that's not Spider-Man, and it's made by the guys who made XCOM, not to mention it's a card game. Big red flags. But surprisingly, they told a very good story. It builds up the villain Lilith nicely. Just as a warning though, it does have a very slow build. The game starts off with Lilith being reconstructed by Crossbone, then we skip about like 6 months. Doctor Strange reconstructs our character before making the regular Marvel quips. This gives us the opportunity to create our character. Back to the customization in a second, I just want to finish up with the story here. After creating our character, we meet the gang. We are told that we were reconstructed to help Lilith, and from there on out, we are thrown into the deep end, and the game refers to our character as the Hunter. The Hunter tries to remember our past and tries to remember how to track down Lilith because she does have hold of the Darkhold, and Wanda is wrapped up in that. Enough of the story though. I want you guys to experience it for yourself because it is a really good story. Let's get back to the customization that I mentioned earlier. Honestly, I wish the character customization was a lot more in depth. This is one of the few low points of the game, not only with creating your character, but the outfits that you can choose. Your character always looks like an NPC from another universe instead of being a part of the Marvel universe. And this is something that these games kind of struggled with, like we saw it with that X-Men game where you can create your own character. And it's really a disconnect from the universe. That's why I'm not a huge fan of creating your own character in these kind of games. But if you want, you can also customize the other heroes and give them some outfits that are somewhat comic accurate, and you can purchase them with in-game points. But the only thing is you get 2 to 3 outfits per character, and it's really disappointing. It's there's so much lore that they could reference and only 2 to 3. On the other hand, there is a lot more role-playing aspects in the dialogue and the relationships you can choose from who you want on your team. That brings us to the campus where you interact with these heroes. It's called the Abbey in this game. It's really fun to just walk around and interact with these heroes. I get to see Captain America working out or Blade training. It's really fun to socialize with them. And these dialogue options range from cringy to absolutely hilarious. But the heroes in this game is a good selection. You got your Spider-Mans, you got your Captain Americas, you got your Doctor Stranges, you got your Iron Mans. Just to name a few, my favorite is Nico and Blade. I love having them on my team. Honestly, I don't think there's a character that I even hate. Every character is well written and never feels annoying or out of place. Listening to the banter between heroes during the missions or around the Abbey is honestly a real joy. It makes the Midnight Suns feel like an active and cohesive team instead of just a list of heroes that you choose to bring onto your missions. And speaking of heroes, they do reference a lot of Marvel lore and events, which I love. You can really tell that the devs really had a love and a passion for Marvel, and that is great to see. I love that. The combat is a point of contention for a lot of people. Honestly, I thought it was a real blast, and I'm not even a huge fan of card games. It plays out like a regular card game with attacks and buffs, and there's obviously character-specific hero cards that we'll get to in a little bit. Every character feels unique in not only its heroic cards, but also every character kind of plays a role. Everything works really well. The cards are split up into 3 categories: attack, skill, and heroic. Every card played builds up heroism, which you can use on heroic cards. Not for nothing, I love the animations for the attacks, especially the heroic attack. They are very punchy but flashy at the same time. Sometimes this game can have horrible cutscenes with awkward animations, especially when you're in dialogue around the Abbey. All of the battle animations and the battle cutscenes look absolutely incredible. With the good though, there's obviously the bad. The most frustrating part about Marvel Midnight Suns is the social aspect. Everything from social cues to who you take on missions can affect how your team views you. So make sure you don't say good morning to Tony Stark before you say good morning to Captain America. A lot of people looked over Midnight Suns due to its card game aspects, but I think it's well worth your time, especially if you're a Marvel fan. Because it didn't sell well, you can usually find it for fairly cheap. I would honestly recommend it. Number 9, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I know this video is late, but you guys are probably thinking, whoa, this is like 7 years late. Nah, let me cook. I never really got into Breath of the Wild. I just never knew how to approach the game. I never knew where to go, everybody's level was too high, or I was just unprepared by like not having the potions, not having the correct stamina and hearts. Couple that with the slow, sometimes non-existent combat, I hated this game at first. I never got it. But on my third attempt this year, I realized that's the beauty of Breath of the Wild. Not because of the generic combat sequence every 5 seconds, or because of the overblown story that takes like 90 hours. No. This game is slow and methodical. Just like our world, there's highs and lows. The highs and lows, but more importantly, the lessons that we learn. I was so focused on just beating the game, I never listened to what the game was trying to tell me. I never listened to how it was giving me cues on enemies' weaknesses, etc. On this playthrough, I did have a guide with me to help find the shrines and help get through them, and I attacked the shrines one by one and slowly leveled up my heart and stamina. I got to an acceptable level and then I attacked the story. A lot of the missions that I was so stuck on were a breeze for me, and a light bulb clicked. This is what everyone loves about the game. The game is not to be rushed. There is beauty in the quiet moments, like running through a field with a sword. Along with these moments is the beauty in the action-packed moments that you might not get as often as other RPGs. Once I really got into this game, I started making the combat sequences mine by using bombs and environments to attack my enemies. Sometimes I even got the drop on my enemies, which is a surprise for me. I'm usually not good at stealth. This simple design makes every playthrough and encounter different. I started thinking of ways to solve puzzles on my own. I threw that guide away. I was solving everything on my own. I was always just trying to break the game. It felt like my personal D&D session. I'm gonna make a video on this, but there's a distinct aftermath in the game industry after Breath of the Wild. Like I was playing Dead Island 2 recently this year, and I can see the formula from Breath of the Wild's open world design in Dead Island 2 with barrels and elements everywhere that you can knock zombies into. But back to the topic of this video, I want to make a video on that. Throughout this game, you collect treasures, solve shrines, and hunt down Bolkeens. I don't know if I'm saying that right. There's also a lot of collecting of ingredients to cook, which I never really did because I don't like resource management in my games. I missed out. In my recent playthrough, I got really into this. It's so fun experimenting with new recipes and ingredients. I would almost say it's essential to this game. It was so fun to see what worked and what didn't, and what gave me certain buffs and what didn't. The one thing I did leave out is the UB towers. You climb them and unlock certain parts of the map. But unlike the UB towers in Ubisoft games, these are really fun to interact with because they're a puzzle in and of itself. You really need to upgrade your stamina and approach all of these with a strategy. And that's the interesting part of the stamina in this game. While you swim, run, and climb, it gates your progression via your stamina because you can't get on the top of certain towers without a higher stamina or potions. And same with climbing up towers and cliffs and all of that. It gates your progression, which I think is pretty cool. I've never seen an open world game do this, and more games should do this. It's very interesting. There is a lot of world to explore, and I usually hate that, but I don't mind it here. There's a lot of variations and places to explore and people to talk to. There's multiple communities that you can unite to fight against Calamity Ganon, not to mention the themes I talked about earlier. With all this, let's quickly talk about the story. Link is awoken by Zelda, who has been trapped by Ganon. Link has to regain his strength while trying to remember who he is. I think my favorite part of this game is that you get most of the story and background information from these flashbacks. It doesn't tell you how powerful Calamity Ganon is. It doesn't tell you how much of a blight he is on this world. It shows you. And you get these flashbacks after helping the champions of each region. But then again, you can just go and fight Ganon after the tutorial area if you want. It's a suicide mission and it's extremely hard, but it's there. The beauty of this game is taking the highs and the lows and crafting an experience that tries to find the positive in this dark world. In other words, it is what it is. The last positive I will say is in the art style and score. The score really makes you feel like it's a lonely experience, with the simple but effective riffs and strings accompanied with the regular action scene scores that you would expect from battle scenes and boss battles. The art style is very simple but effective, with a colorful art style we haven't seen since Wind Waker, with powerful greens and red getting the center stage. Again, it really hits home with the themes of fighting through the darkest lows to get to the brightest highs, and how light always prevails. One part I never liked about Breath of the Wild, and I know everyone talks about this, so y'all are probably groaning while you're watching this. I hate the breakable weapons. I hate it in Fallout, and I hate it here. If you haven't played this game for any reason, that's literally the only thing I don't like about the game. I don't like it when you get this cool, powerful weapon, and then it just gets taken away from you. And this is an edit that I made in the script, so I'm just gonna say it now. I was supposed to record this game for a certain amount of time. I ended up going 2 hours over that allotted time because I was enjoying myself so much, and I forgot I was recording a video. That should show you how great Breath of the Wild is, and I don't need to tell you that because everyone has told you that already. But if you haven't, if you're like me and you haven't played this game yet, please go play it. Number 8, Bayonetta 2. I never really touched the Bayo series until recently. It was a perfect storm of not really being into hack and slash games, and I never owned a Wii or Wii U, and I was never into the motion controls thing. But let me tell you, this game fucking slaps. The whole series fucking slaps. No, not you. I don't want to get too into the series right now. I do have a video coming up where I want to talk about the Bayo series because I haven't beaten the spinoff yet, haven't even played it, and I'm still recovering from Bayo 3, so that'll come out eventually. But Bayo 2 in particular slaps so fucking hard. It's literally the perfect sequel. It's one of my favorite sequels of all time now, I think. My biggest problem with Bayo 1 was the story. For the most part, it was to justify the action that's on the screen, which is fine. Hot take, that's fine for you to have just an okay story to justify the game that's on screen. I mean, it's a video game at the end of the day. The game was fun, and the story didn't really kick off till like halfway through the game, and it basically a fish in the water story. But Bayo 2? That story slaps so fucking hard. From the opening cutscene, the game sets up the stakes from Jean dying in the opening act, which I don't necessarily love when games do that, but they made us care about Jean. We know Jean. That's the difference, is if you make us care about the character, then it's okay to kill them off because you've earned that. And save her soul, a la Kratos. The story was so good that I rushed through it to save Jean like she was my friend and I could just jump through the screen and save her. The story isn't the only improvement though. The combat fucking slaps so hard. My biggest compliment about the Bayo series is that the gameplay feels like what would be a cutscene in other games. And Bayo 2 is the same thing. Bayo 2 has this thing called Umbreon Climax. It's essentially, for a short period of time, she can form these like giant demon arms, like 40-inch pythons.
Or with a 24-inch pythons hanging off a big hog.
And it's really good for clearing the room. And it also adds to the lore because she could do this in the cutscene, so why can't you do it in gameplay? And the final boss really just cranks the gameplay up from 0 to 1,000. Not to mention the environments and the sound design in this game are top fucking tier. The music in this game, chef's kiss. I can't say enough about this game. This game is amazing, and everyone needs to play it, whether you're into hack and slashers or not, whether you like Nintendo games or not. Get a Switch and fucking play this game. Number 7, Tiny Tina's Wonderland. This is probably the weirdest one for me. Borderlands is my favorite looter shooter and maybe even RPG of all time. Tiny Tina is the character from that D&D DLC that came out for Borderlands 2, but this time it's stretched into its whole game. It's a blast. I'm a little bit of a D&D noob myself, been playing it for a couple months, but even I can say this game captures the true essence of D&D. The game starts off with a beautiful cutscene showing the main character of the game battling against the Dragon Lord and them beating him and capturing him. Hey, hi. I realized that I misspoke in my recollection of the story, and I only realized this after I was editing it, so I'm just gonna punch in really quick and just explain what I got wrong. The Queen wanted counsel with us because the Dragon Lord is about to awaken from his capture in his tomb. So Queen Butt Stallion gathers our team, and we go to the tomb to defeat Zomboss. And Zomboss is teasing us with his ghost afterwards, So we pick up this sword that is lodged in front of his tomb, and we stab him with it, and his soul goes into the blade because this sword can trap the souls of its victims inside the blade. I wonder how this is going to be important going forward. With that, we head back into town for some conversations with the locals and more tutorialization. But Stallion has the idea that she's going to knight us. So we go to the front of the castle, and while we are getting knighted, the Dragon Lord comes back and kills our highness with that same soul-sucking sword. With the sword, he can now take every soul of every living being on the planet, and he can also transcend the game itself, because Tiny Tina doesn't even know what he's going to do. Tiny Tina's not controlling him. So with that, I will bring it back to past Jason, and he will finish off the video. And Dragon Lord goes off, and he transcends the rules of the game, where even Tiny Tina can't figure out what to do. He changes the game in ways that the game can never be played again.
Changes to the game such that the game can never be played the same way again.
The story isn't great. It's not going to spawn 4-hour video essays. I think the best part of the game is the environments, like the hub world is just a regular village, but you can also travel to this like James and the Giant Peach world. Like, it's like James and the Giant Peach meets Doom. It's great. The biggest change in the game for me is probably the world map. Instead of going to those like weird in-between areas like in Borderlands 2 and 3, you have an overworld where you can just spawn into the locations. And it has a lot of cool things, like there's puzzles, there's random encounters, and there's fun elements like lifting a Cheeto off the board that Tiny Tina totally forgot about and then lies to you and says it was supposed to be there all along. The weapons are really fun in this game. I love the justification for guns in D&D is just because it's cool. Sometimes you don't need to explain everything. Take notes, George Lucas. But the weapons and loot are really fun and cool. I like the medieval inspired guns. I think the worst part of the game though is the skill trees. Historically in Borderlands games, you get 2 to 3 skill trees that are very in depth, and you can watch whole like hour-long videos explaining what to choose and everything like that. And usually 1 to 2 skills can drastically change the whole character's makeup. But in Tiny Tina, there's just one skill tree. I mean, you also get attributes related to your class. Every time you level up, you get 1 skill point and 1 attribute point, but some of these attributes are locked behind a paywall. Don't get me started on how scummy that is. Fuck you, 2K. On the contrary, the classes are very unique and leave a lot of room for replayability. Due to the D&D inspired theme, you can also create your own avatar and customize every inch of that model. Yes, it's a physical model that is not painted and you can customize to your liking, just like in a real D&D session. It's really fun, and you can also get loot in the world to customize your appearance. I love this. I've been asking for this since BL3, but it is very limited in some areas. Like, the character you make can look very cool, very ugly, and there's also more interesting options like orcs and elves. I mean, it is D&D's base, so yeah. But the thing that I don't like is the hair customization is severely limited. There's like 5 or 6 options. All in all though, Tiny Tina's Wonderland is well worth a fresh roll. It's maybe not a nat 10, but it's not a 1 either. Number 6, Yakuza 4. I feel like if you know the Yakuza games, you kind of know where this is going. Like the hyper drama, the fun combat, the dumb mini games that I can't stop playing instead of doing the story. Also, I'm not crying during the karaoke, you are. Yakuza 4 is no different. After the snorefest that was Yakuza 3, my expectations for the first time in the series was in hell. Yakuza 4 well smashes it out of the park. It's a great time. At first, I wasn't really into playing as Akiyama in the first couple chapters, as he helps fellow citizens get financial help that they need. He is really funny, and he's so careless, and his too cool for school attitude is so fun, juxtaposed to Kiryu's stern demeanor. My favorite part about Akiyama is his backstory. It really ties in to what happened in Yakuza 2 in a really meaningful and interesting way, but sometimes it kind of gives Avengers and Spider-Man, like, where were you this whole time? You also get to play as Sajima, a hardened hitman that has been in prison for the last 20 years that may have gotten framed for a hit, and he needs answers. Tanamura is a freshly minted cop where his dad got killed by Sajima supposedly, and he's looking for answers. And of course, you play as the dragon himself, Kiryu, which, drumroll please, looking for answers. All of them play differently and even have their own skill trees. It's a nice change of pace, especially in such a long game, to have the switch ups from Akiyama to Kiryu. Akiyama uses more kicks and fast-paced movements to dodge enemies. Sajima uses more brute force with a devastating running knee that you can charge up at the end of your combos, and it's really fun to see these Yakuza members just go flying after devastating running knee. Kiryu being the more combo-centric heavy hitter that isn't as sluggish as Sajima but still packs a punch. And Tanomura being a good balance between Kiryu and Akiyama. He's not as fast as Akiyama, but he's not as powerful as Kiryu. Yakuza 4 also adds these photo moments where you can take pictures of these wacky scenes in the streets to learn new moves and techniques. I wish this was a real thing in real life. I think the one downside of the game is a downside that you see in most Yakuza games, which is it is so fucking long. Like, it takes so long to get going, and even when it does, you scratch your head wondering, how do these 4 people connect? Wait, what's going on? And it kind of leaves you confused for a little bit of the game, but if you stick with it, it has amazing payoff. And it drops so many little hints throughout the game that in the last chapter, it just pays off and shit hits the fan. Once everything connects, you get the aha moment. You are like, what the fuck just happened? This game is one of my favorite in the series, and I think that you should not only play this whole series, you should play this game. Number 5, Super Mario Wonder. I think for the longest time, I was exhausted from 2D Mario games. I think the Wii's middling releases of 2D Mario games really did some damage to the 2D Mario property, which is a real shame. Super Mario 3 is one of my favorite platformers of all time. Even when Wonder was announced, I was skeptical. I didn't get it for weeks after release. I wanted a new 3D Mario game. When I say Wonder is unique, that's not doing it justice. It's just one of those games that you need to experience. The way it uses color and smooth animations, you can really tell that this was a labor of love. This is a beautiful game. Like, seriously, I've never seen animations this smooth. One of the way it helps the Mario fatigue is the new abilities. You get Wonder Flowers and Elephant Shrooms, just to name 2. Both of which, I love how the game does not hold these cards to its chest and wait to play these. You get these in the first level. I really want to touch on the Wonder Flowers first. How do I even explain this? I do not know. It's like taking every psychedelic drug in the world and then playing Mario. It transforms a regular Mario level into these weird, unique scenarios, from walking through a field with singing piranha plants to just being one of the enemies. Like, it is so weird and I love it. It's definitely a game changer. One of the other game changers is the Elephant Shrooms. Although it's not an alternative when compared to the Wonder Flowers, it just makes Mario turn into an elephant, like it sounds like, which you can suck up water and to water flowers for coins, or you can even move things like pipes and furniture throughout the level. That's not the only game changer that Super Mario Wonder brings. There's also stickers that can be applied to your character of choice, which drastically changes the game, like being able to use your hat as a parachute a la Breath of the Wild, or being able to like dolphin dive underwater. I will say the only one I really found useful was the hat parachute, and you get that in the first level. I know that's really subjective, but it gave Flower Blossom from Spider-Man 1. How you obtain these stickers is by completing these challenge levels that you usually find in the overworld, and you usually have to use these abilities to solve a puzzle or complete a challenge. Honestly though, the puzzles and challenges are very unique scenarios that never really happen in a Mario game, and that's why I don't love these abilities, because some of them are really useless. It's a nice change of pace from going from level to level, capturing flags, that now you get these challenge levels. The only problem I have with the game is how easy the boss fights are. Most boss fights go through the same formula: jump, dodge, attack. And I really wish they took the creativity from the Wonder Shrooms into the boss levels. Like, imagine a Wonder boss. That would be amazing. All in all, Super Mario Wonder is definitely...
Say the line, Bart!
wonderful. Number 4, The Last of Us Part 1. I was never the biggest Last of Us 1 fan. Part 1, what the fuck it's called. I know that's blasphemous. I never liked the slower style of The Last of Us, going from cover to cover, throwing bottles or bricks to distract the enemy just to stealth kill them from behind. It was never something I was super interested in. I'm not sure if it's because I'm getting older, but everything in this remaster felt different. The combat feels a lot more responsive, and the guns had impact, whether it was the sound design or the actual animations. It just felt a lot more impactful when you shot a gun. I never really had the how did that person see me moment at any point in this game like I remember experiencing in the original PS3 version and in the subsequent remaster on the PS4. The gameplay in this game feels on par with the gameplay in The Last of Us Part 2, which is my favorite in the series. Series? I don't know. That's why I don't mind putting it on this list. It felt like a whole new experience. This is probably one of the prettiest games I've played on my PS5. I was taking screenshots every couple minutes, and I love a good photo mode. I never liked how the original game looked. I always thought it looked ugly with its black and browns. In the remaster, there's a lot more color. It really enhances the aesthetic tenfold. The original Last of Us had wide vistas, which is enhanced by the new graphical fidelity and the glimpse of color to this dark world. This feels like storytelling in a really dark way. The light and color protrudes through this dark, desolate wasteland. There's nothing new about the story, but it's masterful, and it's interesting going back after you've played through the series, because the game hints at a lot of stuff going on in the second game in the first game. One of the new parts, for me at least, was the DLC Left Behind. I never played this when I played the original game because I was just burnt out. I was like, I don't want to play this game anymore. I didn't like it, so I didn't play the DLC. But it takes place during the late stages of the main game where Joel is unwell and Ellie has to hunt for meds. She makes her way through the mall, and having very limited weaponry, she has to scavenge and survive. Eventually, Ellie gets knocked out and goes down memory lane, and you get to play as Ellie as a kid, which drives her backstory in a very fulfilling way. I've always been an advocate for show me, do not tell me, whether it's games, anime, or anything else. Show me, do not tell me. When we hear the optional dialogue in the original game, I was like, it's neat, but I didn't care. I don't have a reason to care about her friend. But having to live through the traumatic event of Ellie holding her dead friend in her arms when they both got bit, and that's how Ellie found out she was immune, is powerful. And not only that, but the fun that you get to have with Ellie before this, with having water gun fight and taking your friend into a photo booth and seeing Ellie really happy for one of the first times in the series. I know there's a lot of debate on the price, but honestly, I believe this is a great package for any gamer, and especially if you haven't played The Last of Us Part 1, this is the best place to play it, and it's honestly pretty cheap now. Like, you can get it for $40. I would 100% recommend this. Number 3, God of War Ragnarok. I don't think I've ever seen a comeback like God of War. God of War is a legendary franchise and one of my favorite PlayStation franchises. But for a while, there was nowhere for this series left to go. Especially because the story never had nuance or depth. The story was always to justify the gameplay, which I talked about earlier is fine. If the gameplay is good enough, you really don't need a deep story. It can just be a fun game. And I feel this was the trap of God of War. Kratos slaughtered everyone. It wasn't shocking anymore or surprising. It was just another day at the office for Kratos. It lost its spark, but the new games have flipped this on its head. Ragnarok is the climax of this change. I know this probably isn't the last game, especially because they have talked about making a spin-off. The game starts off where the first game ended. You are being hunted by Odin and by other foes like Freya, which Freya in this game is fucking ruthless. I love it so much. She is so fucking cool. You eventually retreat and form a game plan with Atreus. Ragnarok has some of the best pacing I've ever seen in a game. There is never a dull moment in this game. I never feel like my time is being wasted. This might be a little spoilery, but the most masterful part of the story for me is the scenes where Kratos and Atreus get separated. You really feel the rift and the emptiness, or the lack of presence of your companion Atreus or Kratos. It doesn't end there though. The scenes with Odin feel so tense. You get chills whenever you see Odin and Thor on screen. Not to mention the anime-like fighting scenes. This game seriously has some of the best fighting cutscenes that I've seen in gaming, maybe even in animation in general. Enough of the story though. The combat somehow feels more fluid and responsive than it did in the 2018 reboot, which is impressive because that game was amazing. This game has even better combat. You can now add new weapons to your arsenal, like Atreus can turn into a bear, and Kratos has the ability to summon spears that he can throw at enemies, and you can explode them at any time. Kratos also gets a variety of rage options, from fists to healing. I never really felt the need to change it from the fists, but they're there if you want it. The level design is also impressive. Every level and world feels unique and thoughtful, and traveling through the tree is much more engaging than going to the hub world like you did in 2018 and just putting a disc in. Like, you get to travel through the tree and the characters get to conversate and really reflect on what happened in the story when traveling from world to world. You also get to play as Atreus through some of the story beats, and they don't last too long, but you do get to feel the absence of Kratos' weapons. Not just in the story beats, but like we talked about earlier, you can only use your bow and arrows in these scenes to smack enemies or stun and swipe them with your bow. Some of the aiming in these scenes feels clunky and leave a lot to be desired. I think this is the downside of this game. The chapters you play as Atreus, I feel like they could have added more tools and just things to your arsenal. The fighting in the Atreus scene are really gimmicky and the aiming is very clunky for the bow. Don't worry though, the Agrabotus scene honestly is not that bad. The internet is just conflating this issue like they always do. Definitely, this is a game you can't miss, and it is a must play for all PS5 owners. Edit though, I wrote the script before the roguelike came out. I know I'm dating the script. Oh my god, it is so fun. I can't stop playing it. It's a blast, and they add so many abilities and new dialogue options and a whole new story. And the fact that they could do this for free is such a middle finger to AAA gaming and shows that you don't need to monetize every inch of your game if you just make a solid video game. Number 2, Hi-Fi Rush. There are some games that just hit you over the fucking head that you really can't explain why they're so special. Hi-Fi Rush is that. Hi-Fi Rush was shadow dropped at an Xbox Live press event. I didn't even hear about it until months after the fact, and it's probably the most unique game that has come out this year. It's a rhythm action adventure game where you start off at this university and you're trying to get into the university for gifted kids. No, it's not the X-Men, I promise. And a robot malfunctions and a nano gets lodged into your chest. This sets up the rest of the combat. You have to keep on the beat with this iPod and the music that's coming out of this iPod. But the thing I love about it is it's not mandatory. You can stay off beat if you want. As a music producer, I love systems that are this casual because games are my escape from music. And admittedly, I'm not the greatest at rhythm games like this with combat because I usually find it hard to stay on beat because I'm so focused on the enemies and the things around me, I can't focus on staying on beat. And I can't explain why, but I love this game's casual approach to combat. You are rewarded for staying on beat, but you're not punished if you miss a note. This makes the game approachable for all who can play it, whether you're musically inclined or not. I've probably played this title the least out of all the games on this list because I canceled my Game Pass, but the sound design is incredible. I mean, you gotta have good music for a rhythm game, right? But this game gives punk rock with some modern twists to it. And the sound design and the music, it's just out of this world. It's so unique. I listen to it all the time on my Spotify. I love the title track. It's something I listen to quite frequently. And it's one of my favorite soundtracks aside from Bomber Cyberpunk, but that's because that's more my style. And the art style is also something to write home about. It gives comic book with a lot of bright yellows and reds, and really the impact after defeating an enemy is so cool. And the cutscenes are done in this almost like comic panel style. It's so cool. You have to play it. For anyone, if you like rhythm games or not, check it out. It's also coming to the PlayStation, so if you're a PlayStation guy, you can also play it. Honorable mention, Dead Island 2. Dead Island 2 is a game I never thought would actually release, but even the most surprising part, it's a blast. Probably one of my favorite games to play on this list. It's a lot of fun. It's a huge step up from the original. Your stamina is no longer a concern, and combat is really fun and fluid. It really encourages exploration from the range of weapons and elements. With a lot of the weapons you can just try out, from the standard wooden 2x4 to a flaming katana that also has the chance to explode on impact. Modding weapons is really fun as well, with new weapon upgrades being found in the overworld. These upgrades range from explosions, adding blades, electrocution, fire, and corrosive. And they also change the look of your weapon, which is really nice because, I mean, it's a first-person game. Like, that's what you can see for most of the game is your weapons. My favorite part of the game is how the zombies' bodies and faces react once you hit them with fire or corrosive material. Hit them with a flaming sword, watch their skin burn. Throw a corrosive grenade, pay attention to their faces when they try to bite you. Their skin will be melting off the bone and it looks so bad ass. And it's not just the elements, every weapon does this. So if you hit a zombie with a blunt weapon, watch their eyes pop out or chunks of their flesh pop off of their chest when you hit them on impact. Not only are these elements fun to use and look at when you look at the zombies, but the variety of elements have combat implications, some of which are immune to certain elements. Like the armored zombies are immune to blades, of course, while the hazmat enemies are immune to corrosive weapons and grenades. If you've ever played a video game in your life, they're pretty easy to spot and tell, like without the game telling you, and it's executed with perfection. It never feels forced or you have to go out of your way to collect these weapons. You usually get them just by traveling in the overworld. The combat is also a blast. I'll go out of my way to fight zombies and I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to do the story. Another way this game shakes up the formula is throwable weapons. I think I mentioned them earlier, but you get them by doing side quests or progressing through the story. They range from, pun intended, from standard grenades to ninja stars or corrosive grenades. If you don't have a weapon, you can just use the throwable. The throwables are on a meter that you can have 2 equipped at a time and you swap between them during gameplay. It's honestly very useful. I felt like I kept swapping out of them depending on the situation, especially if I don't have a powerful corrosive weapon. Speaking of which, swapping out, the skill tree is something that kept me intrigued throughout the whole game. When Dead Island 2 starts, you get to pick a character with some basic buffs and character-specific attributes, like any RPG. But the main skills come from the cards. You have a certain amount of cards that you can activate, which these slots get unlocked throughout the game as you level up. And the cards get unlocked either through natural character progression, playing through the story, or you can literally just find these cards throughout the game. I love this system for skill tree. It's my favorite in any game that is released in the last several years, competing with the likes of Borderlands, which without a shadow of a doubt has the best skill tree in any game that I've played. But back to Dead Island. That's another topic for another video. As an example of how good this system is, I had a build, it was focused on speed, and I had a dropkick. Then I got the ground and pound skill. I think I found it in the overworld, and I started speccing my character out to more tank skills. This changed the game fundamentally. I had to adjust. I love this. It's a good example of a skill tree. You can interact with it as much as you want, and the changes are meaningful dependent on the playstyle, instead of what I like to call Sony trees, where you just can unlock everything by the end of the game. Speaking of meaningful, the story in this game is actually pretty damn good, with a shocking reveal that your character gets bit in the earlier parts of the game. At this point, you are like, how is she still surviving? We find out later that she's immune, and this is really good storytelling because we know that she's gonna survive. Obviously, it's the start of the game, but how is the interesting part? There are a lot of twists and turns on the way, and you do get to play as 5 heroes, or as Dead Island puts it, slayers. They are all really well voiced, and they all have their own style and dialogue, which is surprisingly and a nice touch. I think my favorite part of this game and how it doesn't take itself too seriously. There is a lot of constant jokes that points fun at itself and Dead Island 2. I love that. So many games nowadays I feel like take themselves too seriously. Dead Island 2 just feels like a B movie in its writing, and also its presentation is such a breath of fresh air. The art style in this game is phenomenal. You get these artistic shots when you're just playing through the game, and these shots manipulate perspectives and lighting to give you these really unique shots. The colorful California sun is really striking against the undead ghoul. The neon lights flashing upon the blood-soaked streets is so cool. I think my favorite aesthetic part of the game is the influencer mansion at night. The way the neon reflects upon the streets and how you can see in the distance is so cool, and it makes it feel like a center point of the map. It's stunning. In Dead Island 2, you get a bunch of small maps where you can shred zombies on, Hollywood, Beverly Hills, and more. It's almost like a Metroidvania because you have to backtrack quite often and you unlock new areas every time you backtrack. And this is welcome due to how beautiful the game is. I know I keep saying that, but it truly is, and you truly just need to experience it. I just wish there was a goddamn photo mode. Stop making game beautiful if you don't have a photo mode. Anyways, back to what I was saying. The world is full of environmental storytelling, puzzles, and quests. Some of these side quests are really fun and engaging, and in other games, they could honestly pass off as main quests. That's how good they are. I would recommend going through all of them in your playthrough. All in all, Dead Island 2 is such a breath of fresh air. The game doesn't steal the show, and it's definitely not worth the full price in my opinion. I think it's a little overpriced, but it's worth every second of your time, and I would recommend it to anyone. If you know me, you know I've been obsessed with Spider-Man since the first issue I read as a kid. It was the holographic cover with Venom, and then they also had a holographic cover with the Lizard. And ever since the Spider-Man 3 game with giant lizards, we have been in dark times for Spider-Man games. But recently, with the Insomniac games, we have been eaten so good. And my game of the year this year is Spider-Man 2. Insomniac really outdid themselves with this one. Every inch of this game is packed with Spider-Man lore and love. I mean, hell, the start of the game has you facing off against Sandman while Peter and Miles play hooky from school, which is a perfect place to actually start. You play as both Peter and Miles as you try to get rid of Kraven the Hunter. I was really worried about this because every game that does the dual protagonist, in my opinion, drops the ball and it just feels forced. I don't think it's perfect here. I do think, though, that Miles has like nothing to do with the story. He's literally just writing an essay, and for most of the game, he's kind of just like kind of meandering. But essentially, you can switch outside of missions whenever you want with a super cool like GTA 5 animation where it pans outwards and then it goes to them like fighting crime or whatever. I love this. The swapping feels thought out, and it's just cool. I just don't know how to explain it past it's cool. They have similar move sets as you would assume. Peter has the iron arms that he got from Otto, and Miles has his Venom powers that you got in Miles Morales. These kind of replace the gadgets from the first game. I mean, they're still gadgets, but fundamentally it replaces them. What's also gone is the spider powers, so I'm sorry, no Web Blossom. I know, now you can't take out a room full of enemies. I'm sad too. But it does have takedowns, which is nice. Web Swing in this game also gets a really big overhaul with extra speed and traversal upgrades like the Iron Legs and the Spider Wings, which, oh my god, using these tools is so much fun. Web swinging gives hours plus of fun. I could web swing all day in this game and I would never get bored of it. And it's really expanded from the first game, and it's designed to complement the traversal scenarios of New York City. New York City is pretty much just a playground for the Spider-Man in this game, which is what I'm so here for. In that playground, there is a lot of bad guys as well. Like in any Spider-Man game, there are randomized crimes, and this is kind of different from the first game. The crimes change throughout the story progression, which is such a treat. I love how the city of New York changes throughout the story. It really makes New York City feel like this really living, breathing city, the same way the quests give New York City a lived-in feel. One of my favorite quests in this game is with Miles's girlfriend. She is Death, and you have to look for visual cues in this quest, and it kind of drags out a little longer than I'd like, but it is a welcome change to the formulaic superhero formula. It shows that these stories can be more than just superhero flick. They can have real human stories and real human interactions. That is reflective in the main story as well. You spend a lot of time with Harry and MJ. I loved this. I loved riding my bike with Harry and getting the backstory from him on where he's been and what's going on with him. These calm moments really make me feel connected to Peter and his struggle with being Spider-Man like no game or media ever has. The human moments of the Spider-Man game really make me enjoy the big bosses just that much more. But what's a boss fight if you're not dressed in hot pink? Am I right? The game added new suits, but a lot of them are repeated from the first game, which I don't love, but they also do have customizable colorways, which I thought was going to be a real throwaway feature. I honestly got so much use from this feature. It's something I never thought I needed, but once it's here, I can't live without it. And if I haven't said this is the prettiest game on this list. On the PS5, definitely. The way the sun just reflects off the towers and the city, and the way the city looks and the bright reds of Spider-Man suits is so cool. And Venom and Kraven look menacing. I literally get chills when I see them. Spider-Man 2 is definitely one of the best games that came out this year. I strongly believe it would have won multiple Game of the Year awards if it was in 2023. From the combat to the storytelling, Spider-Man 2 is one of the best superhero games of all time, and it deserves your attention for a swing. That's it, folks. My favorite games of 2023. And hey, look, it wasn't full of 80% ads. I'm sure there'll be a lot of disagreement, though make sure to be respectful And if you have any suggestions or anything you want me to talk about, let me know in the comments. Sorry about the video quality. I have a cheap capture card that I got from Facebook Marketplace. I think it's an Elgato, and then I have a cheap webcam I'm recording this on. And sorry that it's late. I've been moving and I've been trying to figure out how to do this logistically speaking, and writing scripts. And then OBS just doesn't want to work sometimes. It's a whole thing. But thank you so much if you stayed for the whole video, and thank you if you just watched like a minute or two. I don't care. But thank you for just clicking on the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more video essays, because I got a lot planned and I can't wait to show it to you guys. Peace out.